But if I prepare a claim, organize it, have all the pertinent information, understand what I need to do in order to be considered a service connection, I have a greater chance of getting service connected or getting a disability level that's commensurate with what I have than if I just throw it in there and hope it fits.
Open ranks, march!
There are some steps that you can take. Get some education. Second of all, identify what is a viable condition to claim. Do you have, so basically they say there's three things you need for a successful claim. An event in service, whether it's an exposure, broken bone, surgery, chronic illness. I say exposure because now the PACT Act with the toxic exposures. You have to have a current diagnosis, usually within 6 months of your file date, and you have to have a nexus. So the nexus is basically a letter from the doctor or an annotation in your records that your current condition is a result of this event in service. So if you, say, for example, you have hearing loss, you were in an artillery unit, now you have hearing loss. How does the VA know that it's not from, whether it's from your artillery exposure or since you got out and you're an avid hunter and you go without hearing protection? So was the hearing problem because of your hunting and shooting a gun off, in the midst of a hunt? So how do they determine? Well, the nexus. The doctor says it's more likely than not this hearing loss was started before he went out hunting. So it's having the knowledge of what you qualify for and understanding, at least in a ballpark figure, what your percentage you can expect for certain symptoms. One of the battle cries I always hear from veterans, but it's in my records. And then they get a denial letter, and in the favorable comments, it says you were diagnosed with a disability, but you're denied. Well, how can that be? Well, the favorable comment is a requirement. The VA is a mixture of legal and medical, and the legal requires us to annotate if you've ever been treated for a condition. So let's say you had bronchitis 1 year and you haven't had it since. That's not compensable. That's considered an acute and transitory condition. Whereas if you have bronchitis, you've had it ever since then, and now you've been out for 5 years and you still have bronchitis every winter, that's a chronic condition. That is compensable. But again, there may be circumstances you have to prove that it was started in service and not after you got out.
So you're saying that the onus is really on me.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I am an advocate for myself, right? Because when I'm thinking about this whole process, when I'm about to go into it, I got to figure out who I am doing this for. Is for me and potentially for my family, obviously, because I need, as I get older, I might need medical care that the VA could actually fill that gap. So what you're saying is I need to be the advocate for myself by putting together the best evidence possible in front of you.
Sure.
Let me ask you another question then. So I hear, right, because I'm a first-time follower, I hear in these groups that the VA has raters who are not medical rating me on medical stuff. How is that even appropriate? So why do I feel like that makes me feel like I'm wasting my time? Can you address that?
So I would like to say that I didn't have this argument, but I actually did. where somebody said, well, they're always GS6s or whatever, and they have no medical background. Um, Not true.
Hmm.
Some of the Raiders I worked next to had completed medical school. They didn't want to go through the process of becoming a doctor and having to pay buku dollars for malpractice insurance. I
Okay.
had some that were Navy corpsmen. I had some that were uh, nurses, and they didn't want to be working a midnight shift.
Get it.
And sometimes once you get to be a GS12, you're going to be making more than a practical nurse does. Okay. There are people who were legal assistants or actually had their, but they didn't pass the bar. Whether they attempted or not, I don't know, but they still have the medical knowledge.
Mm.
Okay. Then you have people that are in my case. Okay. Um, I was a unit, uh, I guess you call it an alternate to the unit medic,
Mm.
where I would sit in and help him. You'd have a quick sick call and somebody came in and they bruised an elbow or they had a blister on their foot or something like that. Okay, then that led up to, uh, like I said, when I was helping the veterans as a veteran employment rep, I got involved in medical knowledge and things of that nature. Doing my own claim, I followed the advice I gave you just a little bit ago about doing research and knowing what you're talking about. So I went and I said, okay, I have sleep apnea. I know this because my wife beats my shoulder up to wake me up because I stopped breathing at night. And then um, I looked, thank God for the internet system now. I don't have to go sit in a library, but I
Mm.
dug up sleep apnea.
Mm.
What are the causes? What are the symptoms? And then I started doing an investigative search and I said, okay, well, let's back it up to where the basic thing starts. I have rhinitis. Okay,
Mm.
rhinitis causes congestion. The congestion then gets whatever virus, bacteria, whatever, then becomes an infection. Oh,
Right.
now I have sinusitis.
Situs, otitis
Okay.
media.
And then I look at it and I go, okay, we're talking about obstructive sleep apnea. What happens with the sinusitis? Well, you have turbinates in your sinuses
Mm.
that secrete the mucus that cause the boogers, and those swell. They hypertrophy. Well, they're supposed to go back down to normal after the infection's over. But if you're having 12 to 15 sinus infections a year, it doesn't go down. So that now narrows the space in
For
your
airflow.
sinuses
Right.
for the
Yeah.
airflow. And then your tonsils swell up too. So now you got that in your throat. So I had surgery to roto-rooter the sinuses,
Yeah.
fix the deviated septum, and had my tonsils taken out and a bunch of soft tissue. Okay, and the doctor stated emphatically that it was obvious that my airway was compromised and
Mm-hmm.
causes the sleep apnea. And I
Right.
got a letter from him saying that that's the case. So where did I get this? Well, I was exposed to a gas chamber. I was exposed to uh, jet fuel on a flight line. I was exposed to diesel fuel in the motor pool. I was exposed to so all this stuff
Yeah.
together, and now a good majority of the people coming back from Desert Storm have sinus and respiratory issues.
Right.
What does
Right.
that lead to? Sleep apnea.
Right.
But
Right.
I also have to show that to the VA. So I have to put that into perspective and maybe develop a timeline Like, okay, diagnosed with rhinitis at this point, diagnosed with sinusitis at this point. Now I have a sleep study that says this. Boom.
So you're saying then, for me to really put something in front of you, I have to do, the mindset is I have to do some work.
When we're in service, we're taught and trained to overcome, adapt, improvise. Why we lose that capability when we get out, I don't know. I never had somebody when I was in service who did something for me.
Close ranks, march!